media. As consumers, we are bombarded by it at every turn, like the Incredible Hulk being bombarded by gamma rays. But what makes some media endure, while others are banished to the forgotten black hole of obscurity, never to be heard from again? Who or what decides this? Hetero life mates Steve and Yahel want to know, and they want to know now. This is Obscurity Now. And what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Obscurity Now, the show that is so secret you probably don't know about it, yet I sure hope you're still listening and or watching. My name is Steve, and with me is a man who has a license to thrill. It's...
Yahel, how are you doing, Steven?
I'm doing great. I still have my license to ill all the way back from... when the Beastie Boys gave it to me. Yeah, they never took it back, surprisingly.
Wow, that's weird. They must not keep good records, I guess. Of,
no.
Their licenses.
Yeah, they're more into rapping or really not doing much of anything these days. Probably just counting their money.
Yeah, probably.
Yes, but anyway, welcome to Obscurity Now, a show where we take a look at obscure media and we decide if it should be tossed into the black hole of obscurity or remembered until the end of time. And today we are diving back into the world of 90s animation with James Bond Jr. Yahel, what's your history with James Bond Jr.?
Nothing really other than, I remember seeing the commercials for it as a child.
Well, let's back it up then. Like, are you a Bond guy? Are you a James Bond guy?
No. I've seen a few of them. It's okay. I'm not like a huge James Bond fan by any means. I've maybe seen like 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah. Who's your favorite?
I like Daniel Craig. I liked GoldenEye. I like Pierce Brosnan.
Brosnan.
I like him so much. Listen, Steve, I'm a little hungover from yesterday. You could even say I'm feeling a little yuckola, as one of the characters from James Bond Jr. would say.
Oh, God, they did say that. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, we're going to unpack that later. Well, thank you for asking. I'm a huge, I'm not really, I guess, all right, not that huge anymore, but I basically grew up watching James Bond movies. Like, I remember my parents, they were like, come over here, son, and watch this movie about a guy with wacky gadgets. And I watched it, and I was hooked, and I used to always... They used to have those huge Bond marathons on TBS back in the 90s, and I would usually be there for, maybe not all of them, but for quite a few. And I actually like Pierce Brosnan quite a bit. I would say it's either him or Roger Moore because they are in the campiest James Bond movies of them all, I would say.
Okay.
I actually find that the Daniel Craig films are good, but they're just so serious. Like they don't have like Jaws in it. They don't have they just don't have the camp that Roger Moore and Pierce Brosnan films do. Although GoldenEye is, not very campy, but have you seen Die Another Day? Woo!
No.
Oh man, you gotta watch that one. We might have to do an episode of that, or at least like a commentary track or something. Like there's an awesome sword fight in it, which is why I love it. But then there's a moment where Bond like parasails and they're on some sort of like it's like a hotel made of ice or something, just like ridiculous.
Naturally.
Yeah, ridiculous, over the top, because they were trying to compete with Triple X at the time. You remember that film?
Oh my God, yeah.
With Vin Diesel. Yeah, there's like...
Who could forget?
All right, well, are you ready to dissect James Bond Jr.?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's get in. I thought I had some James Bond reference. Let's just get into it.
All right.
Welcome to your feature presentation.
All right, and here we are at the Obscuritron, where our lovely James Bond Jr. photo collage is playing in front of us, and there he is, looking super serious with his with the classic '90s sort of spiky / mullet.
Right,
Is that
right.
how you would describe it?
Yeah, it's very weird because I don't know, I don't remember this came out in 91, I think, 91, 92. And I don't remember mullets still being popular because for me, I thought mullets like by 88, 89, they were already kind of not that in fashion anymore.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I would say that it's sort of close to the Captain Planet hairstyle, which I don't know who decided that was the popular cartoon hairstyle at the time. But
Dude, now that you mention it, even his face kind of looks a little bit like Captain Planet's face.
Absolutely. And interesting that you mentioned that this came out in 91. The last James Bond movie, just if you want to fit James Bond Jr. into the James Bond chronology, was License to Kill with Timothy Dalton back in 1989. And then we didn't get another Bond movie until GoldenEye with Pierce Brosnan in 1995. So I guess they were trying to fill the James Bond void with James Bond Jr. And I
guess so.
I don't know about you, but I don't think they succeeded. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, it was not the best cartoon I've watched this year.
Well, save it to the end, buddy. Let's see.
I do want to point out though that James Bond's accent, it's very, his British accent is very fishy sound, and it actually caught me off guard because for some reason I thought that they were just gonna have it like an American, have played James Bond Jr. or something.
Sure.
So I wasn't expecting to hear any accents. But anyways, the accent is so terrible.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked it up, and the guy that plays him, that does the voice of James Bond, his name is Corey Burton. Well, he was born in California, so he's not British. So
We got you.
Why the accent is very inauthentic. It's because it's not authentic.
Well, worse than that, I mean, I guess we should save this till we get to the cast portion, but just how high pitched it was, but we'll get to that. All right, so for a full rundown of James Bond Jr., of course, we went to IMDb, and so James Bond Jr., it was basically just one really long season of 65 episodes. I can't believe they got 65 episodes out of this. That ran from 91 to 92. We're watching the very first episode, which is brilliantly titled The Beginning. And
obviously, this inspired Garth Marenghi's Dark Place.
Once Upon a Beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
And I also thought it was funny that, last episode we had Garth Marenghi, which is British comedy, and here we have faux American British cartoon going on here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought it was funny that they ended up next to each other. But anyway, so The Beginning appeared September 16th, 1991. And before we get any further, you could actually watch the entire episode on YouTube. We will link that in the description. That's where I watched it. I assume that's where you probably watched it yourself. Okay, so first we'll go with a series synopsis, and here it is. The nephew of MI6's greatest spy carries on his uncle's legacy by combating a rogues gallery of new and familiar villains with the help of his schoolmates. It should say school chums, I think.
Yeah, school lads.
Yeah, yeah, schoolyard chums. And the episode 1 synopsis is en route to his new school. Now, this is one thing I had a problem with. Is it Warfield Academy? Caulfield? I could never figure it out.
I thought it was Warfield.
All right, let's go with that. Okay, Warfield Academy. Of course, I copy pasted this off of IMDb, so of course it's Warfield. Warfield Academy. James Bond Jr. is chased by scum who is interested in stealing the Aston Martin DB5. And man, after watching this episode, I feel like Aston Martin must have sponsored the entire 65 episodes of James Bond Jr. Because, I mean, the entire episode is basically built around it, and they constantly refer to it in, like, as much as they possibly can.
And it's very unusual, to hear a brand.
Yes. Name
anything.
Although it is synonymous, with James Bond. I mean, after a while, I think they switched to like BMW or something, but I'm sure no one cares. But anyway, what's pretty surprising, especially given the quality of this pilot, is the amount of like cartoon veterans that are involved behind the lens, if you will. For our directors, we've got Bill Hutton, who worked on everybody worked on tons of crap. Here's some of the highlights. So Bill Hutton worked on Toxic Crusaders, RoboCop, the cartoon, Police Academy, the cartoon, and Pac-Man, the cartoon from 1982. And then we've got Tony Love. He's also a porn star. It goes without saying.
Yeah, naturally.
Yes. He worked on 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, which I don't know. I think that one's pretty hilarious because they've got that really annoying little Hispanic sidekick in that one. Did you ever watch 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo?
Oh, because I'm Hispanic, you think I watched that one, Steve? Is that what you're implying here?
Well, of course. I mean, I just didn't...
Steve, my family and I, we ate tacos and we watched...
Well, they put him in there. They put him in there for you, Yahel.
No, I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, well, that's because, I don't know. I think it was pretty poorly received. And for some reason, like, Vincent Price is in there, or at least a guy doing an impression. Anyway, Tony Love also worked on the original TMNT and Yogi's Treasure Hunt. I don't know why I picked that one. And then we've got, there are 5 people credited as writing this. First one is Andy Hayward. He's the developer. He worked on Inspector Gadget, Super Mario Brothers Super Show, and Zelda. Then we've got Robbie London. Of course, you got to have a guy with the last name London work on James Bond Jr.
Right, naturally.
He's also a developer. He worked on Captain Planet, He-Man, the Alf cartoon, and Hey Vern, It's Ernest. One of these days we're going to do an Ernest episode. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
Francis Moss was the writer on Mighty Max Exo Squad. And, of course, Cowboys of Moon Mesa. Please refer back to our previous episode, TMNT Ripoffs, where we talk about Cowboys of Moon Mesa and Biker Mice from Mars. And what was the other one? Street Sharks. Yeah.
Yeah, good job, Steve.
Thanks.
I did not remember those.
I knew you wouldn't. And then we've got... Ted Peterson. We're almost done here, I promise. Ted Peterson, he worked on Pro Stars, The New Adventures of He-Man. See our previous episode where we compare The New Adventures of He-Man. I did this all on purpose, I swear. And then Michael G. Wilson, who was also the developer. And this actually kind of blew my mind. This guy actually wrote the scripts for real James Bond movies. He did a bunch of them. For Your Eyes Only, Octopussy, and A View to a Kill. There, I know it blew. And then
are those good James Bond?
Yeah, I love A View to a Kill is great because Chris Walken is the villain, and For Your Eyes Only is good. And I mean, Octopussy, it's got everything you need in the name right there. It's Octopussy on a stick, baby. Okay, and then real quick, there's a couple of producers, but the only one of note is Fred Wolf, who was the executive producer of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Alvin and the Chipmunks, and DuckTales. And why don't you take it away with the cast there, brother?
Sure. I'm gonna jump around if you're following along on the IMDb page, I don't know why, but I'm gonna go a little bit out of order. You'll see why here in a moment. But first we have Julian Holloway. Mm-hmm. He plays Mr. Bradford Milbanks, who kind of runs the Warfield School or whatever it's called. We've got Mona Marshall, plays Tracy Milbanks, which is kind of like the love interest and daughter of the guy that runs the school. And Mona, she is the voice of Sheila Broflovsky in South Park.
Oh, nice.
Which is crazy. I mean, she has like a ton of credits to her name in her IMDb. And most of these people do, like hundreds and hundreds of voice acting credits. Brian Stokes Mitchell, he's Coach Mitchell, which we only see a few times, at least in the first episode. Jan Rabson plays Jaws, who I didn't realize Jaws was like a real James Bond character.
Oh,
I looked him
yeah.
up and he looks
Jaws
ridiculous.
is classic. Oh, he's even in Goldeneye.
He is?
The game, yeah.
I haven't seen it like in, a decade plus, so.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate you letting it slide. Then we got Susan Silo, who plays Phoebe Farragut, who I think that was like the friend, right, of Tracy Milbanks.
That was like the nerdy girl who's like
the nerdy girl,
infatuated with James Bond Jr.
Okay, and then we've got Corey Burton, who does the voice of James Bond Jr. I almost forgot. And he has like 400 something credits to his name. It's crazy. I know him as doing the voice in, and don't press anything yet, Star Trek Starfleet Command Orion Pirates video game. It's a 2001 video game that I hadn't heard of until today.
Wow. Okay.
Then we've got Jeff Bennett, who does the voice of IQ and Scumlord. You may know him from doing several voices in the 1997 video game Star Trek Starfleet Academy.
Wow.
Then we've got Simon Templeman, who I don't even remember what he did on this show. What he did? Oh yeah, he was Trevor. He was Trevor
Noseworthy.
The fourth, and you may know him as John Bates, a holodeck character from The Defector, a Star Trek: The Next Generation episode. And this last one, it's kind of cheating, but I did notice that like Alan Oppenheimer is in later episodes.
Oh, nice.
I think he's like in 3, and he's like, the voice of Skeletor and a bunch of other things. But to me, he's the Klingon Korath from Star Trek: The Next Generation, although he was also in Deep Space Nine and Voyager. And that is everybody involved with Star Trek. Actually, there were more people like in later episodes that are involved in Star Trek, but I was like, I can't do this. We'll be here all day.
All right, here it comes.
Oh no! We've just entered another Star Trek connection.
All right, I'm glad the Star Trek connection is back. Like there was a few episodes where we had none.
That really made up for it. There were a lot, and there were like I was just like randomly picking names from like future episodes, and I like found like 4 or 5 other people who were in like Star Trek episodes. So this could have been an all-day situation, Steve, but
well, thank you for sparing us, and I hope you now feel whole again.
I do feel better.
But one character you kind of missed, and I don't know, he's a bit prominent, and also a reference to the actual Bond movies is you said Jan Rapson does the voice of Jaws. He also does the voice of Gordon Gordo Leiter, who is the son of Felix Leiter, who was always like James Bond's like CIA like liaison or partner or whatever you want to call it. And of course, he's the surfer dude, as you'll all see, because every cartoon in the 90s had to have a surfer dude.
With attitude.
Yeah. Yes.
Steve, did you happen to look up what SCUM, the criminal organization, what their name stands for?
I did, but I would love to hear you tell me.
It stands for Saboteurs and Criminals United in Mayhem.
Yes, mayhem.
So what do you think happened, Steve? They came up with SCUM for the name, and then they were like, well, we should make that like an acronym, and then they just got like shoehorned in this name.
Yeah, I feel like about as much thought went into naming it Scum as this entire script, basically, which is very little thought at all. So let's dive right into this. So we start out on a beautiful country road. There's a high-speed car chase. One car's hood opens up to reveal a giant laser, and there's like no engine in there, so whatever, you can do the math. The white car in front hits a ramp off of a nearby truck trailer and goes airborne, and the other car just sort of gives up. I guess he wasn't going as fast, so he couldn't hit the ramp. The driver of the car in pursuit is revealed to be none other than James Bond Jr. He adjusts his rear-view mirror, seeing his pursuer is no longer following, and says in a high-pitched British accent, "Pity they missed their flight." I mean, maybe it wasn't that bad, but you get it.
I think it might have been worse. Like this Corey Burton guy, like, is he racist against British people? Like, he's just trying to make them sound like as wussy as possible. Like,
right. I feel like he's like never watched a James Bond movie in his entire life. But
he may have never heard a British. I feel like somebody told him what a British accent sounds like, but didn't do a British accent, and then he just interpreted it based off of a written explanation.
Some computer algorithm figured it out for him. So now James Bond Jr. is being chased by 2 motorcycles with rocket launchers mounted to the front. They fire at James, miss, and his car soars off a cliff. The motorcyclists dismount just in time to see their bikes hit by the previous car and pushed off the cliff. I just felt it weird that they felt a need to animate that. I don't understand.
Yeah.
But anyway, so a trench-coated man, spoiler alert, it's the scum leader. He exits the car and yells to particularly nobody, the audience, I guess, "Goodbye, young Bond." But of course, Bond's car turns into a plane. I mean, you'd think the scum lord would be used to this kind of crap by now. And he flies off into the sunset.
How weird is it, like, the button, to turn the car into a plane, it said, like, flight conversion.
Right,
like,
right.
Not plane mode, or I don't know. I just thought that was very strange,
Now,
flight conversion.
Yeah, they need to talk to whoever named all the gadgets in the Batcave, because that was a lot more precise and to the point. But yeah, like, so basically this is the cold open. All in all, it's pretty typical James Bond stuff. And as I was watching it, I almost thought to myself, aside from the voice, like, which was awful, I was like, maybe this isn't as bad as I remember. Like, this feels like James Bond. Like, there's action and he's attempting, like, one-liners here and there. I'm like, maybe this isn't so bad. What were your thoughts?
I mean, I thought it was okay for an opener. I think it did what it, like, set out to. Because I too was like, oh, maybe this won't be so bad. You establish who your bad guy is, your big bad guy is. You establish your good guy. That he's got gadgets and whatever, yada yada. So it was all right. I thought it went on a little long.
Right.
But like, they go through, like, hay and a country side. And,
they really want you to know they're in the country. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then we are treated to the James Bond theme song, which I actually didn't think was too terrible. What did you think of it?
Yeah, no, it was pretty good for, like, a 90s kids show theme song, and it still kind of sounds like Bondish.
Exactly.
They did a good job of kind of making, like, if I had just heard this song and without the lyrics tell you, that's Bond or whatever.
Right.
I would be like, oh, that sounds like something from James Bond, kind of. But they upped the tempo and they make it like something that would be more palatable to children's stupid little ears.
I agree 100%. Okay, so now we're
but Steve, I do want to point something out.
Sure.
That the theme song teaches us. I pay attention to the lyrics of these, like, 90s cartoon songs.
Sure, as well you should.
Because there is some serious exposition happening and explanation in this. Like, we find out that he's not James Bond Jr. He's not James Bond's son. He's his nephew, because he says he learned everything he knows from his uncle. So I guess we can't have, like, James Bond having, like, a baby or something.
Yeah, that's so weird, because, like, how odd would it be if, like, my brother named his son, like, well, I guess it would be Steve Honeycutt the third, or if I named my next child Yahel Velazquez Jr. Like, but I mean, we're not related in any way, but still, it's like, usually the way it works is the son becomes the junior, like, not a like, that's so weird.
So maybe James Bond's parents named both of their sons James, and that's why this kid is also James Bond Jr.
Right.
Yeah, it made no sense whatsoever. No. But I get it. This show is grooming children to become James Bond fans.
Sure, I could see that.
That's the attempt.
And I mean, they had as you can see from our photo collage here, or maybe not see, depending on how you're enjoying the show, there are quite a few comics, video games, and action figures for James Bond Jr. Way more than I ever would have imagined.
Steve, what's your favorite issue of the James Bond Jr. comic book?
Oh, I really liked number 3 when they introduce a bunch of diversity. No, I don't know. I don't think I've ever read a single one, to be honest. But anyway, so we are now outside of Warfield Academy, and a stuffy-looking professor type stands in front of well, at first I thought they were diverse students, but they're really not. And they realize someone is late, and James's car / plane flies over like the group of students, transforms in midair, and slides right into a parking place. Very Zach Morris, if I do say so myself. Yeah, nothing of real note happened there, except for, I mean, it does a good job of just showing that James Bond Jr. is one smooth customer.
Yeah, he's real cool.
Yeah, right. And
but
so
then it's weird because like then later like the guy that runs the place chastises him. And
right.
He's like, "Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I probably did deserve to get scolded." Like, huh? Why would you fucking do it?
Yeah, and that is in our next scene in the office. Professor guy, or he's not the professor, he's the dean. He lectures James Bond about being late, and this was so weird. He's like, "Oh, I want to help you by confining you to school grounds for a week."
Right.
And this comes
Why
into
is James Bond at this school?
Yeah,
he's already like a spy or something, right?
He's got why is he? Well, I guess they try to explain it. They're like, "Oh, all of our students here are, their parents are important people, so I guess they need to be coddled and taken care of by the, the advanced security system that's at the school or whatever." Like,
yeah, so I guess I was very confused about what this school is supposed to be, because I assumed at first, oh, this is going to be like a school for like spies.
That's what I thought too.
But they never say that.
No.
No. But then the Coach Mitchell guy or whatever like tells him about scum and like that they've stolen. So it seems like the people that run the school are spies or trained spies, but we never really know what the fuck they do at this school. It's very weird. Yeah,
it's vague, super vague, because, I don't know, maybe they just didn't bother to think all that out. So now
And to be fair, maybe it gets fleshed out in later episodes.
Yes, yeah, there was a lot of that going on when I was watching it. So I was like, I sure hope they explain this later.
Didn't you watch this growing up?
I saw a couple episodes. I don't know. I feel like it was one that was not in heavily rotation. And while I was watching it as an adult, I was like, and I probably even thought this back in '91. Why would I watch this when there's 4 Ninja Turtles who are like beating up on Bebop and Rocksteady like every day?
Yeah. And plus, you were like already like a hardened James Bond veteran from watching films like Octopus.
Yes. Why my parents let me watch that, I'll never know.
Grizzled young James Bond vet is what they
Right.
called you at the playground, from what I understand.
They just started calling me James Bond in elementary school after a while. But no, like I would have. I mean, I think just hearing the title, I was at least curious because it's James Bond. But then like watching it, let's just continue. So now we're outside the school grounds. James reveals that James Bond is his uncle, and Coach Mitchell shows him around the campus. They also explain that Warfield Academy students are all sons and daughters of important people. That was basically the only purpose of that scene. So now we're inside the dorm. There's a bunch of science stuff all strewn about, and James meets the atypical science/tech dude in the name of IQ. I don't know if you remember from the couple of James Bond films you watched, but
yeah, Q makes all the gadgets.
Just making sure. And
I even wrote in my notes, of course, they have like their own version of Q. And
right.
Of course, like Q is this IQ character's grandfather, I think is what they said.
Right. So he shows James this green liquid that's supposed. This is so random, so stupid. That's supposed to be able to like boil an egg in like 3 seconds. Of course, it explodes, and then smooth old James Bond Jr. with his like awesome one-liners goes, "I guess the yolk's on us." And wah wah, yeah, eye rolling to say the least. So now we're back outside on the school grounds again. IQ shows James his watch that shoots a rocket. Totally based in reality, I'm sure.
Yeah, very tiny rocket that doesn't really do much damage anyway, so like what's the point?
Doesn't it shoot down like a bell pepper or something?
Yeah, it shoots down like a pepper or an apple. Yeah. I couldn't really tell what it was supposed to be be honest.
Right.
So, some sort of thing that grew out of a tree.
Yeah. So now we're in the Warfield.
Well, you know, I guess if James Bond Jr. is being accosted by a wild group of produce items, he can he'll be able to get his way out, himself out of the situation.
So now we're in the Warfield cafeteria where we meet Gordon Leiter, who, as we said before, is the son of Felix Leiter, and he's the typical 90s surfer dude. We also meet Tracy Milbanks, whose father is the headmaster. Now, wait a minute now. The headmaster's British, right?
Sometimes.
And Tracy is not. Like, this just dawned on me. I don't know why it didn't, like, register when I was watching the show, but yeah, the headmaster is British.
Yeah, I didn't.
That's, wow, I don't know what's going on there, but maybe he likes his...
Well, I guess maybe she was raised in California with Corey Burton. And
they were best friends. Yeah. Okay, she says getting friendly with her won't help James out in any way. And James very pervily says, getting friendly with you will be a pleasure no matter who your father is. And,
like, okay.
Yeah, and this is where a, kid-friendly cartoon version of James Bond doesn't work because, like, James Bond is a big-time womanizer. You can't really do that in the cartoons.
It's like he has a couple other like womanizing-ish lines, and the problem is, like you said, it doesn't really work because it both doesn't go too far enough to be like James Bondish, but it also goes too far because it's a kid.
Right.
So
true. We also
later on he says something about like he makes some quip when they're trapped on an airplane that he doesn't find the stewardesses. There's no stewardesses on this plane. He doesn't find the stewardesses very attractive. And it's like, okay.
How dare you like body shame those stewardesses who aren't even there?
Right. I don't know. It was just weird. Like, we get it. Like they would had to establish that James Bond is like a horny ladies man, which is very possible, Steve, because when I was researching my GoldenEye video, I discovered that the license holders of James Bond, I mean, they're very, very strict about the way he's portrayed.
Oh, I'm sure.
And they have, certain requirements that he needs to have these characteristics and this and that. I mean, most license holders are like that with their IPs, but in particularly, like, they're like real fucking nutty about it. So I wouldn't surprise me if, I think they're called like Dan Jack or something like that, if they were like, hey, you need to make sure to establish on this kids show that James Bond wants to fuck.
James Bond Jr. needs to bed at least 3 women per episode, or else I won't get an erection, is what they'd say. But anyway.
Anyway, sorry for the
No, that's fascinating stuff. Then much more fascinating than getting to meet. Hold on, that's MI6 flying over right now. I don't know if you can hear him or not.
Yeah, I hear it. This sounds a lot like an Aston Martin going into flight conversion.
Yeah, I think it's actually a scum helicopter now that you mention it.
Oh, okay. Those saboteurs and criminals.
Anyway, your talk about James Bond IP is way more interesting than getting to meet Phoebe Farragut, the typical 90s geek girl who's smitten with James. And then we get to meet, I guess, James's school antagonist in Trevor Noseworthy the Fourth. Like, this is a character that constantly shows up, I feel like, throughout like 90s cartoon shows. There's one in Mighty Max. He's like this just snooty half British rich guy or whatever. It's like that guy always has to be there so we can see how much tood the lead character has, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah. And so, Gordon, of course, he goes, he's a total dweeb. And basically the whole point of that scene was that we got to meet all the auxiliary characters. So now we're on the soccer field, or football if you're in Europe. Trevor trips IQ. Bond confronts him because we have to see that, Bond is a defender of the weak. It's revealed that they're being spied upon by Jaws, who punches a tree in half. I mean, that cracked me up. Scum leader tells Jaws that Bond's Aston Martin contains this electromagnetic pulse, yada yada, MacGuffin. And he set it up so James Bond Jr. himself will deliver it to them. And
I didn't understand like the plan.
It's so stupid.
So the Aston Martin has like something that will let them freeze some kind of databases. In England, I think specifically. He said.
That's exactly it.
I'm like, what? Like there's other ways, like the economy's not going to stop.
Well, what's worse than that is the steps leading up to the to getting the Aston Martin, which basically step one, send a phony message to the school that James Bond has a package from his uncle at the local post office. Like, apparently they don't have Amazon Prime. Well, it was 91, so there was no Amazon Prime. And I guess the local postman just doesn't deliver straight to the school. Bond has to sneak out of Warfield Academy. And to do that, he has Tracy show him this secret compartment, and then she just casually tells us that Warfield Academy used to be used to train anti-intelligence agency or agents.
I don't know. And then she also says that her own father doesn't know about this secret passage.
But the thing that I like best about this whole scene is that all right, to back up a little bit, once James realizes he has to, actually there's a few things I like. So Tracy tells James the post office called and they have a package for him from his uncle, the real James Bond. James says he better pick it up right away, and IQ reminds him he's been confined to school grounds. James asks if there's any other way out of here, and Tracy says there might be, as long as she can ride in the Aston Martin, because that's all it takes, baby. All you gotta have is one cool ride, and girls will do whatever you want, according to James Bond Jr.
That's right. Good lesson for kids.
Absolutely. And then there's one more thing that happens, and and that's when I wrote, "Is this cartoon brought to you by Aston Martin?" Blah blah blah. So IQ says, "It's against the regulations, James." And this is James awkwardly grabs him by the arms and pulls him in close, and he goes, "Let's not worry about that right now, IQ." It was so the positioning of them in that scene was, I don't know, James was so threatening. It was
it was threatening, somewhat sexual,
homoerotic. Absolutely.
See, and you thought there was no diversity in this cartoon.
There you go. And then that leads to Tracy showing us the aforementioned package. And by package, I didn't mean to say package. I meant to say secret passageway. And while they're investigating the secret passageway, Trevor Noseworthy is spying on them from a tree. How did he know to be there at that time? That's quite a coincidence. But what's even more coincidental, Agent Yahel, is that Gordon just happens to be underneath him, turns on the sprinkler system, soaking Trevor Noseworthy. How did he know to be there, Yahel? Can you explain that one, please?
No, Steve. But, this is a cartoon where there's a British dad with an American daughter. You know,
There's your diversity.
yeah.
So then there's a pretty meaningless scene of them driving the Aston Martin, which again, the Aston Martin people must have demanded it because, I mean, no information is really expounded in that scene. Then they're at the post office. James goes inside. Tracy stays in the car. James comes out saying that there was no package. Jaws steals the Aston Martin with Tracy still in it. But the best way is how he steals it. Can you explain to me how Jaws steals the Aston Martin? Do you remember? Something very significant and ridiculous happens.
I don't. Does he? No. Later's when he chooses to Aston Martin.
No. There is biting involved. I'll tell you that because his name is Jaws, so he has to bite everything.
Yeah. Does he just like grab it with his mouth? I genuinely don't remember. Maybe I had looked down on my phone or something.
Okay, he pulls out, like, you know how people like hot wire the cars in movies and stuff. He pulls out the wires, bites them, and then the car just turns on magically.
Okay, yeah, because I know he's like hot wires the car again later. So
Right.
And it was already like chewed up. Okay.
Yeah, so that cracked me up. And then now James calls Gordon and Phoebe. They show up. I guess it's Gordon's van. He seems like the type who would own a van. Gordon shows IQ a bunch of tech stuff that I guess they requested he bring. There happens to be a gadget there that can track the Aston Martin. They follow the Aston Martin to a lair in a mountain. IQ gives James his watch. Like, they make a big deal of it where James is like, "Oh, but it's your pride and joy." And it's like, a woman's life is at stake here, James Bond Jr. Like, come on, man.
By the way, you know, in that scene, they say that like all cars, all MI6 cars have these tracking devices on it. So that means that James Bond Jr. like has a car from MI6, which I mean, I guess we could have figured out, right? Because it can turn into a plane,
right?
But, so he's already like an agent. Like why is he at this fucking school?
Right. See,
like,
I feel like, I mean, we should probably save it to the end, but why not? I just feel like they kind of missed like a big opportunity in here. Like, wouldn't it have been better? All right, instead of making a guy named James Bond Jr., who's pretty much exactly like James Bond, like, why not show him like going through training, like doubting himself, trying to live up to his great uncle's like legacy? Like, that would have been so much more interesting, but hey, this is what we got. So where are we here? Oh yeah, so they go into the mountain. IQ gives James the watch. They find an airfield where James is meeting with the Scum Lord. And this is so dumb. Instead of just driving the Aston Martin onto the cargo plane, for some reason it's in a truck. Like, so I guess they had to do, and they put it in a transport truck.
yeah.
And that causes, and then James, he puts the green liquid from before in its gas tank, which causes it to overheat. So Jaws comes out and assists the driver into checking it out. Then James sneaks into the truck to rescue Tracy. Jaws finds him. And then, you know, usually in the movie, like, this would be the part where I would be like, oh yeah, James and Jaws are going to like fight it out. He just picks him up with one arm, then picks up Tracy with one arm and throws him into the trunk of the Aston Martin. And then they drive the Aston Martin onto a plane. Like, what? Whose plan is this? This is the dumbest plan in like supervillainy history.
And dude, also like with the truck overheating, James Bond puts the liquid right in the engine. They drive the truck 10 feet, and they're like, the bad guys are like, oh, it overheated. It wouldn't overheat, like, even if you had no coolant in it whatsoever. It's like an overheat, like, in 10 feet of driving. What are you talking about?
I know. God, it's like, I mean, sure.
And I know it's a kid's show, but
I mean, but you still have to, like, put some quality into it, man. Like, you know, look at Batman the Animated Series. That's going to premiere in like a couple. I mean, is it already going on in 91? I don't even remember. But
I thought it was 92.
Yeah, that's.
But I want to be wrong.
Yeah, well, that's the difference between Batman the Animated Series and James Bond Jr. Anyway, so now we're on the plane. James uses IQ's watch to escape the trunk. They get in the car, but James realizes the flight conversion is broken. Jaws runs back to the cockpit, having almost been run over by Bond. Jaws bites the bumper of the car, which just looks hilarious.
Yeah.
James and Tracy grab parachutes. They use a remote to make the car continuously ram into the cockpit. They jump out of the plane, and the plane crashes. And then they show Jaws. He like lands in some hay, and I think he says like
he lands like through like a building, like a barn.
That happened in one of the movies. I guess they were referencing it. And he just sort of looks up, and also for people who are looking for differences between the cartoon and the show, like Jaws never even speaks until Moonraker. You ever see Moonraker?
No, but I mean, I vaguely know what it's about.
Well, you should watch. There's a lot of space in there, so I think you'd love it.
Right. So isn't it weird that like James Bond Jr., this is a kid's show, was trying to murder Scum and Jaws? Right? I mean, that's what he's trying to do, right? He's trying to kill them by crashing the plane.
Right. And all this because of a car. And that's another reason why this like show could never really work. But I don't know. I mean, you still have, you have G.I. Joe and Cobra. I mean, they were initially trying to kill each other, but none of the lasers ever connected with anyone. So, I mean, if they can make it work with G.I. Joe, then I guess in theory it could work with James Bond if they would have bothered to
but they did other things like concentrate on the writing, the other writing aspects.
Yeah, well, you have to make it good. Like, that's the problem.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's basically we're in the final scene here, back on Warfield U. Trevor Noseworthy tries to get Bond in trouble by showing the dean that Bond had left school grounds. Surprise, surprise, Bond is there. Trevor gets attention instead. And I love like how they felt a need to show us that IQ helped him up using an MI6 ladder.
Yeah,
just a regular ladder. Yeah, it's like typical Animal House like stuff.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Mitchell shows up and tells Bond that despite being destroyed, there was no electro device in the Aston Martin, rendering the entire episode useless.
Right. So basically, there was no real danger to the world economy or whatever. And then the way that Mitchell says it, he's like, "Oh, we were misinformed, and so was Scum." Who is fucking misinforming both of you guys? Like, how did you? Somebody mixed up their files over at MI6.
Right.
Like,
this is almost the equivalent of a bunch of terrible stuff happening in an episode, and then James Bond Jr. wakes up and it's all a dream. It was awful.
I do want to say hello to player 500 in the chat. Said hello.
Welcome.
But yeah, dude, it makes no sense. Why did they include this thing about the device not even being on the Aston Martin? Because it does nothing for the plot other than to make it feel like you just wasted 20 minutes.
And that also makes me wonder, I probably should have checked out some other episodes. I wonder if this search for the electromagnetic device carries out over multiple episodes. I have a feeling that it doesn't.
Yeah, it's pretty unlikely for a 90s kid show. I mean, the fact that it hit 65 episodes is because they wanted to put it into syndication,
right?
And you know how syndication works, so that they can air stuff out of order.
Sure.
So yeah, I highly doubt that this was an ongoing thing.
Right. But the last bit of the episode is that they realized that Uncle Bond sent James Bond Jr. basically the car from the Sega game Outrun. So he gets a new car at the end, a red one, and then he drives off into the sunset. And so basically, this whole episode should have been retitled How James Bond Jr. Ruined One Car and Then Got a New One. That's it. That's all that happened.
No consequences for James Bond Jr. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to be at not leave the school for a week as a punishment. Nope, he left the school, destroyed a car, That's fine. Here's a new one. No consequences.
Right. Yeah.
He's sexually harassing every woman,
Yeah,
and sometimes every man he comes across.
I was gonna say it's like, oh, that's not my child. Like, but you didn't wear a condom. It's like, I'm James Bond Jr. I get away with everything. Oh man, wow. So let's see here. Some final thoughts that, I mean, we pretty much addressed all of them. Like, I mean, overall, it has the beats and the plots of a James Bond movie, but everything else is just terrible. Like the additional characters were just 90s stereotypes that were completely uninteresting. James Bond Jr. acts exactly like James Bond Sr. As we said, they could have tried something different,
right?
As just to make it different. Let's see. And I mean, when you get right down to it, all right, Bond movies, well, prior to Daniel Craig, like, aren't really about, character development or anything like that. It's all about like the action and the crazy set pieces. And the action in this wasn't even any good. Like,
no, it's pretty terrible.
Yeah, when Jaws just picks up Bond and Tracy and puts them in the trunk, like, that wasn't cool. That wasn't.
And the quality of the animation wasn't very good either. Even for the 90s, I thought it was pretty subpar.
Oh, I agree completely. Yeah, they didn't even try to make it good. So, any other final thoughts about James Bond Jr.?
Not really.
All right, let me.
I was.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Just. No, go ahead. We can judge it. I'm prepared.
All right. Here comes a bumper. Question. All right, so Agent Yahel Velazquez, 0069, also known. Do you think that James Bond Jr. should be tossed in the pit of obscurity, never to be heard from again, or should it be remembered for the rest of time?
No, this is pretty terrible. We can throw this one out.
I agree 100%. Like, despite being a big Bond fan, I mean, Bond deserves better than this trash. And, like, there are plenty of other comics that you could read that are not James Bond Jr. Like, there were some Dark Horse ones. I think Dynamite has the project now, or the IP now. So let me go ahead and, let's see, obliterate this. Goodbye, Mr. Bond Jr. The heathens have spoken. You are obliterated. And that's the last anyone will see of Mr. James Bond Jr. If you happen to come across it, like, in a Google search, you make sure you delete it right away. Obscurity Now says so. But yeah,
what a disappointing cartoon.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I always, look forward to that sort of feeling of nostalgia when we look at these older cartoons, and this just did not have it. Like, even like the only thing I remember there was one episode. Like, I could have sworn I've seen maybe this one. I mean, how many times does his car turn into a plane? I mean, who knows, throughout 65 issues. But I remember one, he had a diamond-tipped comb that he used to escape from something. Like, I mean, totally forgettable. Whatever.
Yeah. Sounds not great. This is like, this is a problem when you're like trying to take like what is, and James Bond movies, at least from the ones that I've seen, they're not like overtly violent,
right,
per se, but they're definitely like for grown-ups, right?
Sure.
And like trying to make a kid's property out of it, that's a difficult proposition. It's like making a Rambo cartoon. Wait, didn't they make a Rambo cartoon actually?
Yes, they did.
Oh man, maybe we should cover that.
Oh, I mean, I've got it on the list. I wanted to do like animation or kids cartoons based on rated R properties. We've got RoboCop, Rambo, and Toxic Avenger or Toxic Crusaders.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll figure out how that fits into the mix. I'm gonna try to track down some more Thanksgiving themed stuff. Of course, we already talked about what we will be discussing on the last Sunday of November. So that'll be. Do you remember? You don't have to.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in a few years, so maybe more like 10 years. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, for some reason, I think you were the one who turned me on to that franchise. Because isn't there like multiple?
I think so. I think I randomly came across it on like Netflix. Back when Netflix had like tons of just like random
Trash.
crap you've never heard of.
See, you got to go to Tubi for the trash these days. They got much trash. It's so good. Well, like we've almost hit a full hour. Is there anything else you want to talk about? How's the video coming?
It's coming along. I'm finally about to start the. It's coming along. I should have it done by November 20th because that's what I told my sponsor.
And by sponsor, you mean the guy you talked to in AA, right?
Yes. No,
how long you've been sober?
My magic. This beer is still. Yeah, I finished this beer about a minute ago, so about a minute.
Oh, so the program works, is what you're saying?
Yes, it's good.
Well, cool. Well, of course, if you didn't tune in for our last episode, I have copies of my comic book teaser ready to go. So all I need is your email. You can send it to us in the comments or via Twitter or however you want, and I will send you an 8-page teaser of my comic Escape to Earth. So yeah, I think that.
Do you still have the preview of the cover so that we can see it?
Good. I'm glad you brought that up. Here, let's.
Come on, Steve.
I hope it's still there. Let's see. Why would I take it away? I took it away. What an idiot.
Do you not like your own comics, Steve?
Wait, let me grab it real quick. Let's see. Where is it? It's not even here in the. Oh, now
you need a marketing department, Steve.
Oh man, that would be awesome. Okay. Have you played any good video games lately?
No, nothing new lately, man. I've just been busy with trying to like work on this video. The last video game I played, it's not even new, is Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus.
Oh, I love those.
Which is really good.
Yeah, I love those.
It got a little like, I don't know, like the last couple hours kind of felt like they dragged on a bit, but it's still pretty good.
Okay, all right, here it is. Oh man, that's massive. Yeah, I got Cruisin' Blast for
I heard
Switch.
that's awesome.
I love it. I've played it in the arcade before, and yeah, that's just a fun game. I like arcade racers, even though I'm not like a car guy in the slightest. But arcade racers are okay, I think. Any minute now. Come on, you bastard.
That's right. If you send your email to Steve, you too can get a giant file sent to you with. Oh,
that's not even the right logo, but whatever. You get the idea. There it is. Escape to Earth. It's gonna hopefully conquer the Earth once I get around to doing a crowdfunder. It's gonna blow your mind, especially if you like dinosaurs.
Sure.
I was expecting you to say something. I don't know what.
I don't really have strong feelings about dinosaurs one way or another. They're fine, I guess.
Did you ever watch? And this might be another episode. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Another
Yes.
90s. I love that show. In fact,
Yeah.
I would say it's probably slightly influential on this comic in a way.
Nice.
But yeah,
I missed a couple of chat messages from player 500. He's been playing games, or he or she. I played Far Cry 6, which I heard is really good. In reference to your comic book, Steve, they said looks cool.
Thanks. Yeah, send us your email, as I said, either in the comments or on Twitter, or you can even put it in the chat. I'll send it to you. I'm desperate to send it to you. However you want it, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you good.
Yeah, I'm gonna read it as soon as we're done here. Actually, since I finally got my copy today.
Oh, one last thing. If anyone wants to be our 10th follower on Twitter, not Twitter, Twitch. If anyone wants to be our 10th follower on Twitch, then we'll give you thoughts and prayers. Of course, we have way more on YouTube, but I just thought if you wanted to help us break double digits, then that would be awesome. But anyway, I think that is it for this episode of Obscurity Now. I don't think we've decided what we're going to do for next week yet, but stay tuned to the Twitter, and we'll let you know. And, of course, if you came in late or you needed to leave, you can always check on Monday. There will be the video on YouTube as well as the podcast to listen to. Anything else, Yahel, before we sign off?
No. Just everybody go buy. Actually, don't buy any Magic Spoon cereal. Wait till you get my code, so I'm allowed to give my code out for your discount.
Mm-hmm. You shill, but that's great.
Dude, in all seriousness, the Magic Spoon cereal, like, I think I told you they sent me like a big box of like all the flavors. They're really good. I am genuinely, in fact, I kind of wish I didn't like it as much as I do, because it makes me enthusiastic to talk about it, and then it sounds like I'm lying in a strange way, right? Like I'm like too into it.
I just assume that everything you say is a lie.
Well, Steve, you're a great friend.
Yes, that's friendship, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
Yeah, let's get out of here.
Okay, we'll see you next week on Obscurity Now.
You've been enjoying Obscurity Now, a podcast that's recorded live to tape and streamed to Twitch and YouTube. Subscribe so you never miss an episode or hilarious quip. Take us with you by following the download links provided in the show notes to wherever you get podcasts. And take notice of our various social media links if that's what you're into. I'm not here to judge. And make sure you join us live next week at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific as we continue to discuss more obscure media only on Obscurity Now.